I read The Moving Finger by Agatha Christie. In everybody's life, there are hidden chapters which they hope may never be known. Starting with the characters, Jerry Burton is the main character and the protagonist of this story, who narrates the book for us. He is a former pilot who is recovering from a surgery after his plane crash and moves to a small town of Limestock after his doctor told him a small town would be best for his recovery. He is very perceptive and observant and shortly gets to know all of the other people in the small town. Joanna Burton is Jerry Burton's younger sister who is very social but is found by the village people to be quite odd and unique with how she dresses and how she interacts with people. She really enjoys socializing and initially finds the life in the small town very dull and not very exciting. But as the story continues, she grows fond of the small town and finds empathy in all the people receiving these anonymous letters. Megan Hunter is the stepdaughter of Mr. and Mrs. Symington. She is very quiet and gets to know Jerry Burton really well as he finds an interest in her. She is seen by the rest of the village people as very quiet and isolated, but Jerry Burton takes her and shows her her confidence and finds that she is very smart. Mr. Symington is the local socialite and husband of Mrs. Symington. He is a businessman who is seen to be respected by the rest of the town. Mrs. Symington is the wife of Mr. Symington and is a housewife who is very dedicated to her socializing and talking with all of her friends and is not seen taking care of her children very often, but she is the first real victim of these letters. Elsie Holland is the Symington's governess or their nanny who is responsible for taking care of the children and is very involved in all of the children's lives and activities. She is seen as very beautiful by all of the town men, and they often make comments and ask her out on dates and things. But she is very reserved and remains professional and never takes them up on those offers, and she's very dedicated to just helping the children and looking after them. Miss Emily Burton is the image of what the small town should be and is who is renting the home to Jerry Burton and Joanna. And she is seen as a sweet lady who has nothing to do with anything and just lives her peaceful life in the small town. Miss Marple is a amateur detective who is brought in later in the story by the police to help solve the case of who is writing these letters. She is known as an outsider with a new perspective to catch certain things that the police have not been able to see yet. The plot. Jerry Burton arrives in Limestock after he is involved in a plane crash and after his doctor told him that he needs to go live a small, quiet life in a new town to recover from his surgery. And his doctor tells him that he needs to get involved and take interest in the local scandal and local gossip of the town. And shortly after he and his sister arrived, they both received an anonymous letter claiming that they were lovers instead of siblings. And they both laugh it off as just a joke and throw the letter away. They then learn that other letters have been circulating throughout the village and that the village people are very reserved and don't like to talk about it or admit that they've gotten a letter. But they find out that many people are guessing as to who would be writing these letters, and they've been written for quite a while now. As more letters circulate through the village, it leads to a lot of gossip and a lot of distrust in these people who have known each other their entire lives. The plot escalates after a letter was written to Mrs. Zimmerman and it results in her suicide, and they find a suicide letter and the letter written by an anonymous writer next to her body, and this is when the police really get involved and take an interest in who's writing these letters because they see her suicide as a potential murder caused by these letters. Megan, the stepdaughter of Mrs. Remington, has a bad reaction to her death and is taken in by Jerry and Joanna, and they are very glad to have her because Jerry is very interested in getting to know her and helping her branch out and break out of her quiet, isolated shell. Jerry then takes Megan to London to have new experiences and help her gain more confidence in herself. Back in Linestock, this is when the police bring in Miss Marple to help solve the case as to who's behind the letters, and she gives very interesting and new insight into who she thinks the letters would be written of, which leads to them being able to solve the case. The final themes of this book are the destructive powers of gossip and rumors and the role of an outsider. The story really embodies gossip because the small town who has known each other for a very long time, which is a tight-knit community, really leans into the gossip of who is writing these letters, and it causes hysteria and a lack of trust in everyone. And it seems to be all that they can talk about from day to day as the letters get more frequent and cause worse reactions. The letters are initially just small, untrue guesses as to what people would be insecure about, but they slowly turn into very accurate statements that hone in on all the insecurities of the community. And this shows that the small act of gossiping and spreading rumors can lead to a much bigger issue and have large effects of harm on such a small community. And then the role of an outsider. Jerry is the main outsider in this group, but also Miss Marple is seen as an outsider who comes in and later solves the case with her new insight. But Jerry is the main outsider who comes into this small community because of his surgery and recovery, and he is offering a new perspective on the details that everyone seems to have missed in the small town. And this fresh perspective allows the town to see outside of what they initially thought that people were like. And as he is exposed to a new sense of life and a new small town feel, he also exposes the small town people to see a new side of how people live and how people behave that they've been exposed to their entire lives. Similar storylines I found was Why Women Kill. Why Women Kill reminds me of The Moving Finger because it is a story that goes 3 decades of 3 women who kill their husbands or kill somebody else. But it reminds me of the very close-knit town in The Moving Finger because all 3 women live in very close-knit neighborhoods that are connected. And the gossip and drama in the small town relates to the gossip and drama of the neighborhoods that the women live in, and how the gossiping can lead to detrimental effects of driving women to the point of murder. And the gossiping also affects the relationships and reputations of people in Why Women Kill, and in the end leads to the fact that the women have been driven to kill somebody. This also reminds me of Gossip Girl because of the storyline of the letters. And in Gossip Girl, it is letters that expose secrets and are filled with hatred, just written to damage others. And this shows this connected to The Moving Finger because the letters in both are written solely to cause pain and to ruin the perfect small town feel of something, and the letters in both are caused by jealousy and often are just deflecting of how one feels of themselves onto others. Academic response. The level of difficulty of this book is very low. It's not difficult to understand and to follow the storyline of. The author puts us in the narrator's perspective very easily, and he has more of a conversation with the readers than in other books that I've read, which makes it very easy to follow along and very easy to get to know the characters of. This book is very interesting to me because I've never read a book that gives us such a first-hand account and not only gives us the exact conversations had between the main character and other characters, but it also allows us to see the main character's own thoughts and how he sees everyone else in the town. Recommendations and final response. People who would like this book, I think, are people who tend to like books that don't get to the storyline right away. There was a lot of descriptions and backstory before the true mystery took place, and it's not until about halfway through the book that anything regarding the mystery really happens. So I think it's more for people who are patient enough and who enjoy getting to know characters and getting to know settings before they get to the main storyline. But I think that this book was really good and I really enjoyed reading it. And yeah, I highly recommend it. It was very good.